Hey guys, it's Girl Got Game, and welcome back to Changeling. Today, we are here for Mark Lowe, our beautiful tsundere vampire boy, and I am so excited. I cannot wait for the amount of sass that is sure to come this route. So here we are in the first chapter of the common route. And I haven't done this yet. I think I did this choice when I did my gander, but I haven't done it since playing the game properly again. So I'm excited to sit with our boy. The seat up at the front was next to a sort of grumpy-looking, well-dressed blonde. He didn't look extremely friendly. There were also two empty seats, sets of paired desks at the back, and one open seat next to a gloomy boy with messy brown hair. He didn't even look up as Mrs. Roberts explained my choices. The only other seat was on the second to last row by the window. It was tempting, to be honest, but I should probably take a seat that at least gives me a reading partner. But both options just looked like so much fun. Alright, Marky Moo, let's go. I didn't want to make a terrible impression on Mrs. Roberts, especially considering literature was one of my favorite subjects. I opted for the seat in the front and just hoped the blonde wasn't as cranky as he looked. I smiled a little nervously as I slid into the chair next to him. His eyes swept over me, lingering for just a few seconds on my face before he looked away. He didn't say anything or introduce himself. Friendly. Today, we'll be continuing our reading of A Midsummer Night's Dream with your partners. Mark, if you would be so good as to share your book with Nora today. I heard an almost inaudible sigh from the boy next to me. To his credit, he tried for a gracious smile. He got an A for effort, but it didn't quite reach his eyes. I sighed inwardly. Maybe I should have just taken the seat at the back. He was clearly rather put out at having to deal with me, but it was too late to pick up and move now. I just had to make the best of it. Mark pushed his playbook between us and turned his chair slightly toward mine. I hope you don't mind sharing with me for today. He sounded slightly less annoyed than he looked. I was hoping that was a good sign. I don't mind. Mrs. Roberts will likely have your reading material ready for you by tomorrow. It's not a problem. I studied this play last year, so I think I still remember a good bit of it. Besides that, it was in my selection of Shakespearean works, and I'd read it multiple times. I see. I have some trouble retaining Shakespeare and pinning down the larger themes in his work, so perhaps you'd be willing to help me with that. Since we started this unit, my scores haven't been as good as they could be. Oh, no problem. I love Shakespeare, so I'm really familiar with his style and all. I don't mind helping. So did he read that from her mind and was like, yo, if you could help me with my schoolwork, that'd be dope. Maybe I was wrong about him being cranky. He seems nicer than I expected. I see. In that case, I'll be looking forward to your expert opinions as we read. Something about the way he said that made it sound more like sarcasm. I chose not to respond, at least for now. No reason to make a bad impression on the first day. I nervously tucked my hair behind my ear and leaned closer to look at the book. Even if he's being sarcastic, he's not going to find a better study partner than me, so there. As I leaned toward him, I couldn't help but notice the expensive-looking watch on his left wrist. Not to mention his clothes, and actually, everything he wore sort of reeked of money. There was nothing wrong with that. But now that I was leaning so close to him, I realized money apparently reeked like really, really nice cologne. You know, the kind that made you want to bury your face in someone's neck and just melt into them? Yeah. And she's gone. I tried to not let it distract me. Down, girl. You are not going to make a good impression on anyone if you start sniffing people on the first day. I had no idea how I was going to focus on reading when sitting next to him was apparently going to be a constant heavenly assault on my olfactory sense, because it was hard not to pay attention to the cologne, at least from this distance. Mark was definitely from a wealthy family. He wouldn't be the only one at the academy, that was for sure, but most didn't wear their wealth so obviously. Then again, he probably didn't think he was being obvious about it or anything. I cleared my throat awkwardly. So, where did you leave off reading last time? I was just beginning Act 3. Then we'll just pick up there. Naturally. Come to think of it, I had to wonder why he was sitting alone if he had so much trouble with this subject, especially when there was another person in the class with no partner. Maybe Mark's original partner moved or something? As I shifted to look at the far page of text, my elbow brushed against Mark's arm. I had barely touched him, but he jumped slightly and jerked himself away, moving his arm awkwardly across his desk, as if to get it completely out of my airspace. Yeah, the thoughts would be really loud then. Sorry? What is that about? When I glanced up at him, his brows were knit together, eyes practically boring a hole into the book. It's all right. His tone was terse, and he didn't look up when he spoke. I raised an eyebrow as I studied him. Sure, some people weren't keen on physical contact, but that had been a little dramatic. Alrighty then. Moving on, I guess. So this is where Bottom and the others are rehearsing, right? Mark nodded, but said nothing else. A man of few words, I see. For the next 45 minutes, we took turns reading. He stumbled over the lines, much like myself, frowning intensely at the playbook the entire time. He'd said he'd been looking forward to my expert opinions, but he didn't exactly give a chance for me to share them. He wasn't really unfriendly, but he was definitely keeping his distance. Literally. From the moment I touched his arm, he did his best to stay well out of my personal space. Or keep me out of his, maybe. Awkwardly so, actually. It was to the point of him noticeably leaning away from me while we read. So sorry I offended you, Your Highness. I take back what I thought about your heavenly cologne, so there. The bell eventually rang, eliciting a sigh of relief from us both. Mark immediately stood and slid his books into a leather satchel. He nodded stiffly and headed out of the class. I watched him go, curious about what his deal was. He was standoffish and acted like I'd nearly burned his flesh off just by brushing his arm. Mysterious. Was he shy? Did he just not like commoners like myself? Maybe I smell weird to him. Maybe you do, though. I resisted the urge to sniff my sleeve just to be sure. Well, whatever. It was just one guy in one class. He could be as unsociable as he wanted. I checked my class schedule and groaned as I realized trigonometry was next. I'd have to ask Allie about Mark later. Knowing her, she'd probably have tons of juicy details to share. Alright, so we should be able to skip ahead again. Alright, so William should be the one to interrupt us at lunch. Fortunately, it didn't take me long. I just had to follow the smell of old hot dogs and sweaty feet. Allie was nowhere in sight, so I just grabbed a sandwich and found an empty spot to eat alone. Yay! I barely sat down when someone else plunked a tray of food down directly across from me. I looked up, hoping to see Allie, but instead saw the messy-haired boy from literature. Oh, what was his name again?
Sorry. This is where I usually sit. They don't like it if I sit somewhere else.
They? The ghosts? You mean your friends? Are they coming too? Should I move? He looked down at me with gentle brown eyes and a serious expression.
No. No one else is coming.
Then who are the they you were referring to? I didn't ask that, though, and he just sat down quietly and started eating without looking at me. I studied him surreptitiously while trying to eat. He was a little disheveled and gloomy. He definitely seemed shy, or maybe just socially awkward. I wasn't sure which. He definitely wasn't much for talking, though. A heavy silence descended on us. I lamented silently about how much I hated awkward silences. So, I'm Nora. We had one class together, so it couldn't hurt to at least properly introduce myself, right?
William.
When he looked up, I was startled by the sad look on his face.
It's good that you didn't sit by me in class. You shouldn't sit here tomorrow either.
What the heck? Who says that kind of thing? Why would he even say something like that out of nowhere? Yeah, William's mysterious too. I couldn't help but wonder if it was because of Kara stirring things up. Who knew what all she had been saying to people? How do I even respond to that? I just looked away, biting my lip to stop myself from saying something unnecessarily angry. I guess I won't. I sat silently for a few minutes before I stood abruptly and grabbed the tray with my sandwich. I wasn't sure why people were so intent on being jerks to me on my first day, but I wasn't really in the mood to put up with it anymore. But if I stayed, saying something unnecessarily angry was inevitable. I'm done. Bye. William jumped to his feet.
I'm sorry. I didn't mean it that way. I just...
With a sudden jolt, my lunch tray flipped out of my hands. Bread and sandwich guts went flying everywhere as it cartwheeled through the air before slamming into the floor and skidding about 10 feet. I stared after it in shock.
I'm sorry. I shouldn't have... I'm sorry. You should stay away from me.
He picked up his things and fled the room, leaving me standing there gaping at the mess on the floor. He hadn't hit the tray, and I definitely hadn't thrown it. What just happened? The entire cafeteria was dead quiet. I could practically feel their eyes on me. Even Spencer was staring from across the room. Our eyes met, and it's not like I was expecting him to ask if I was okay or anything, but he just calmly went back to eating as if he didn't know me. I left the mess on the floor and ran out of the cafeteria, already so over the day. Nothing was going the way I thought it would. Have fun. I can't actually go down. Have fun. Oh, sorry. I had to say that for later. I'm going to... Should I have Allie do it or get Dad? Yeah, let's text Allie. It's been a while, Allie girl. Okay, we're definitely not following the shadow. Sure, Spencer, why not? Let's get things started on the right foot for once. Ah. Okay. Well, we will get Mark in here. I think that's a good starting point.
I knew you were one of us!
She grabbed my hands and squeezed them, grinning at me happily. Whoa! Whoa, back up. One of us what?
A paranormal. Or cryptic. Some refer to us as supernaturals as well.
Mark?
You sound uncertain.
Wait, had he been there the whole time? He was standing in the corner by a large bookshelf, a book in hand as he glared at me with the usual disdain. No. I know it's you. I just have no clue what's going on here. He shot Allie a strange look and huffed an annoyed sigh as he snapped the book shut.
She's probably still awakening. But I mean, she's obviously one of us. She's here, right? If she wasn't one of us, she wouldn't be able to see the club room.
I studied Allie worriedly. Allie, you're kind of starting to creep me out. Why do you keep saying one of us like I've just been inducted into some sort of creepy cult? Also, paranormal? Cryptic?
Okay, calm down. Take some deep breaths before your blood pressure gets dangerously high. I know this is confusing, but I can explain.
Very amusing. I don't want to take deep breaths. I want to know what's going on.
Okay. Well, you're a logical person. Just put 2 and 2 together. Clearly, this isn't a normal classroom, right?
Well, yeah.
There are 2 possible ways to explain what you've experienced. Science or magic, right?
Science wasn't my forte for sure, but magic? I think I need to sit down. Allie helped me to the nearest sofa, and Mark produced a glass of water from somewhere. For all I knew, he pulled it out of a hat. Actually, it's from a cupboard where he keeps all his tea supplies. My head was spinning like crazy. Magic. Allie was not trying to tell me that this was some kind of magic room. Was she? Or even before that, was she trying to tell me that magic was real?
Feeling better?
Not really. Allie just laughed. I glared at her. This was not a laughing matter. I was having a crisis. Are you telling me that magic is a thing? A real thing? A thing that actually exists in a real, practical way?
Yes.
And this room is magical?
Yup!
And I'm magical?
Most likely.
I stared at the door. I could see the hallway outside. It looked perfectly normal. There was nothing near the door that could explain what happened when I entered. No visible mirrors, cameras, or projectors. Heck, I couldn't even come up with a way it would be possible to do something like that with projectors and cameras. I took a deep breath and let it out slowly. At lunch, someone said that this club doesn't take new members much.
This is a club specifically for the supernatural members of the student body. Obviously, normal humans can't be permitted to enter. Typical humans can't see this room, not as it is. As you notice, from the outside it looks like a normal empty classroom.
From the inside, it still looks like a normal empty classroom. 2 normal people. In fact, the spell on this place actually repulses normal people, so they don't even want to enter it.
A spell? Like a magic spell?
Yup!
Is this how Alice felt when she fell down the rabbit hole? Actually, I was pretty sure Alice handled that way better than I was handling this. I took a deep breath as I listened to Allie's explanation.
The spell is designed to protect the club from discovery. It can alter memories, perception, or even the room's location if it needs to, all toward that end.
I was still trying to get my head around all this. I mean, logically, I knew none of this could be true. But here was Allie, someone I trusted and knew was down to earth, and she was telling me this was real. And maybe it was a prank, but I really didn't think Mark was the sort to play pranks. Based on our meeting the previous day, I was almost certain he didn't have a sense of humor, and Allie wouldn't do something like this to me. Not today. I looked up at her and she patted my hand gently. So I can see this room because I'm not normal.
That's correct.
What about you?
Well, I'm a witch, the magic-using kind.
I tilted my head slightly. Oh. Okay, I actually hadn't expected that answer. Not sure what I did expect, though. Okay, let's assume for a moment that instead of thinking you're just insane, I believe you. How did you know I was, what did you say, cryptid? I mean, you invited me to the club this morning, so you already knew, right?
Cryptic is the word you're looking for. We're not animals.
Cryptids are creatures that can't be proven with science, but cryptic is just a name some people adopted for us. It's shorter to say than paranormal or supernatural, so a lot of us go with it.
Hey, unless there's a test on it, I'm not interested in vocabulary at the moment.
Is she always this sarcastic?
Usually. It's worse when she's upset. It's sort of like a litmus you can use to tell how close she is to having a complete freakout.
Ah, I see.
Mark takes out notepad. Gets more sarcastic the angrier she gets. Check. I'm right here, and what I'm interested in is how you knew I was a cryptic, or at least why you thought I was.
Blood pressure! Allie! Okay, calm down. The reason I knew was because of Corvin.
Corvin? What does he have to do with it?
Remember that book he dropped?
Yeah, that weird, creepy one?
It wasn't just a book. It was a grimoire.
Corvin was standing at the door as if he'd just come inside. Man, if this was a prank, they were really going all out. But at this point, I had a feeling that hoping it was just a prank was pointless. Mark's lack of funny bone aside, Allie didn't look like she was joking.
And it's not creepy, by the way. Don't call someone's grimoire creepy.
Hey, Cor.
So we were right about your friend.
Well, you can see for yourself.
Welcome to the Paranormal Mysteries Club. Nora, right?
As usual, he was pretty bubbly. He waved at me from across the room. Did you say it was a grimoire? Like, a magic book?
That's right. And normal people can't see it. So when you so kindly wanted to pick it up for me, I knew you couldn't be a normal human. Thank you, by the way. That was nice of you.
If I'm not normal, then what am I? A witch or something? And does this mean Spencer is magic too? Because I really don't think letting him have magic is a good plan.
Who's Spencer?
My brother, my very paranoid, emotionally delicate brother. While I was speaking, Corvin wandered over and sat on the table next to the sofa. And immediately overturned the glass of water Mark had given me. He jumped back up as a cascade of water ran down his pants and down the arm of the couch onto my lap.
Oh, sorry!
I was still too shocked by the whole magic thing to even react.
Sorry, I'm sorry. Sorry?
He looked around, presumably for something to wipe up the water with. I just sat there, staring at my soaked jeans dumbly.
Allie, perhaps you could...
Don't worry, I've got it. Annoying as that was, this should prove it to you, Nora.
She flicked her hands toward me in a strange circular motion and chanted something under her breath. What? I felt an undeniable wave of warm air and looked down to find that my clothes were completely dry, as was the sofa. I patted my hands over my legs in wonder. There was no sign that they'd been soaked through only moments before. Whoa. That even dried my underwear. Creepy.
Really, Allie? Come on.
His pants were still soaked all down the front.
Maybe if you'd learn to actually read the mood for a change.
It wasn't on purpose. Help a guy out. Air magic really isn't my forte.
Corvin made his best attempt at sad puppy eyes.
Huh.
Allie sighed and rolled her eyes before repeating the hand gesture and chanting she'd previously aimed at me. This time I saw... something. It was kind of hard to describe. The air around Corvin seemed to ripple and the water was suddenly just gone. This is real, isn't it? Allie turned back to me. I knew I was gawking up at her, but I couldn't help it. I mean, none of this was possible. Except I was watching it happen. No mirrors, no tricks. This was the real thing. Oh my god. You're telling me that I can learn to do that kind of thing?
Now that we don't know. There are a lot of different types of cryptics, not all of which have inherent magic, and we don't really know what type you are.
There are many that are non-human.
Wait, if I'm some kind of not human thing, what about my family? You're saying my parents have basically been lying to me all this time?
Not necessarily. Someone can be a cryptic without their family knowing. For instance, if they were infected by something that changed them.
Like zombies?
No, like vampirism or lycanthropy.
I am not a vampire. Wait, vampire?
No, you are most certainly not a vampire.
Hey, why are you saying that in such a snooty way, mister?
But infection isn't the only way for humans to acquire supernatural abilities. Aside from being born with innate magic, there are lots of reasons humans develop powers. Being descended from paranormal creatures is one reason, like having fae or elvish blood somewhere in your lineage.
Elves?
If you did, there's a good chance your parents wouldn't even know, depending how far back it was. And fae blood can lie dormant for generations before rearing its head again.
He was talking to me about elves. I gripped my forehead tightly. I could almost feel my brain being crushed under the weight of all this.
What everyone is trying to get at is that there are lots of possibilities. If you've never demonstrated magic before, it's probably just developing right now.
And probably for reasons similar to what Corvin just stated.
So now you're telling me I'm not even human? I'm a fairy or something?
Calm down. No one is saying that. We don't know anything for certain just yet.
There are ways to find out, though. Some of them just take time.
I don't think I want to join this. Or be a part of this. I mean, suddenly being not even human. It felt gross just thinking of the idea that I wasn't even what I thought I was my whole life. I didn't like it. I caught that look the three of them shared. What is it?
It's just that you don't really get a choice.
What?
Just listen. If you think about it logically, people like us can pose a huge threat to human society. If not because we have unusual abilities, then because by not keeping the secret we could disrupt things.
There are other reasons as well, but those are the primary ones. As you can imagine, there are organizations in place to govern people like us, since normal law enforcement can't really do it.
Organizations like
government organizations that keep track of cryptics.
So now that
Part of the reason this club exists is because we kinda help keep an eye on the cryptics in the school and town as a whole.
You mean there's more than just... Wait, Danny and Elliot are in this club.
That's right.
So they're...
Also cryptics. And there are quite a few others. Once we discover someone new, we're obligated to report them and bring them into the club. The Cryptic Registration Office lets students register through us because it's less stressful than having to go to the local agency.
But people who don't cooperate with us have to deal with them directly.
It's way better to deal with us. I mean, they're not dangerous or anything, but still.
The agency's definitely full of weirdos. You don't want to meet them anytime soon.
So I don't get a choice at all.
Look, it sounds all scary, but it's not. Your world is about to become really amazing. And think about it this way. What happened to you and Spencer as kids may be connected to this.
That wasn't entirely implausible, actually.
Remember when we were little? You and Spencer used to always tell me about the things you saw out in the woods.
We were just playing, though.
Were you?
I ran my hand over my face thinking about that. It was so long ago. My memories were understandably fuzzy. I remembered that Spencer and I had imaginary friends. Sometimes they would come and talk to me at night. And was it possible all of that was actually real? Then when I vanished, when Spencer was attacked, the things he'd said back then.
We can help you research that. Maybe find some answers. Maybe find a way to help Spencer and fix whatever broke there.
You really think I could do that?
Sure! If you learn about yourself, surely you'll learn something about your twin as well.
You said even if I'm a cryptic, it doesn't mean my family is.
That's right. Cryptics have weird genetic quirks. Like I said, with certain types of lineage, it's possible that no one will have even the slightest affinity for magic, or exhibit any cryptic traits for decades. Then it suddenly pops up again, in one person, in one generation as strong as when it was first injected into the bloodline.
That's why something like that might be more probable for you than just spontaneously developing magic. Though that does happen too, rarely.
So that means it's just me. I'm the only one that's different.
Not necessarily. You are twins, after all. It's just that given his personality, we might want to approach him more cautiously.
This is all way too much. I stood up and gave Allie a shaky smile. I think I need some fresh air.
Nora.
Just for a few minutes, please. I just can't absorb all this at once. I stepped around Mark and Corvin, heading for the door. The room felt like it was closing in around me. I had to get out of there and get back to reality for a few minutes. I could contemplate the implications of all this in a place that didn't make me feel like I'd been carted off by a tornado to some strange place and should expect singing munchkins to appear soon. I didn't even know where I was going. Just out. Just away from here. Someone stepped through the doorway just as I tried to leave. Can you please move? My words trailed off to a terrified squeak when I looked up at the boy I was speaking to. He had no. My vision blurred and my entire field of vision narrowed in on the empty space above his shoulders and the gaping hole where his neck should connect to his head. Stunned, I turned back to Allie, though I don't know what I intended to say. My airways constricted, and for a moment I forgot how to breathe. My knees started to go all wobbly, and I knew I was about to hit the floor.
Nora!
I think I'm going to pass out now. And with that, everything went black. Okay, I just wanted to do like the first couple things of this, because it's funny that Mark didn't try to catch her. I was probably out for no more than a few minutes. When I started to come to, I realized I must be lying on the sofa. I could hear the others arguing.
You could have at least tried to catch her.
My hands were full, as you might have noticed.
Oh right, it was Ewan, actually.
Brenna, it's not funny.
His hands were full!
Mark, couldn't you have reached her before she hit the floor?
Ah, they're talking about me.
I didn't see a need. I highly doubt a fall from that height would seriously harm her in the first place.
Are you calling her short? I have to warn you, she's always hated that.
That jerk! I'm not short, just a little vertically impaired. I groaned and tried to open my eyes so I could tell him off.
Nora, are you okay?
The first face I saw was Corvin's looming over me, looking concerned.
Easy. You don't want to move around too fast just yet.
I thought I saw...
You did see it.
I bolted upright.
It was me. Sorry. I didn't know a newbie was in the club or I would have stayed away.
I stared up at him. His head was where it should be, thank God. Oh, I didn't recognize you without a head. That does make things difficult. The unfamiliar black-haired girl was still laughing. I didn't find the situation at all funny, to be honest. I don't think we've met. The girl bounded across the room, pushed Corvin out of the way, and bounced onto the sofa right next to me. She had no concept of personal space. She was practically sitting on top of me.
Brenna, that was my foot.
So you're the new girl? She looked up and down, almost as if sizing me up. She was pretty, but her gaze made me feel really uncomfortable. She leaned in really close, staring into my eyes. A deep frown creased her brow. I stood carefully, just to give myself some space to breathe. Corvin stood too, reaching out to steady me when I swayed slightly on my feet.
Are you okay?
I'm just trying to work out at what point I fell down the rabbit hole so I can maybe climb back out. Corvin patted my shoulder gently.
Maybe Allie should take you home now. I don't think we really made this very easy on you today. It's been a while since we had a new member in your exact position.
Yeah, the trick with the headless boy blocking the doorway isn't one I recommend for new members.
Funny.
Come on, Nora. Cora's right. Probably best to get you out of here for a while.
I didn't argue. I definitely had enough of the Paranormal Mysteries Club for one day. Okay, so we're good. Let's skip ahead until we read our book. Vampires or vampires? Which one should I read about? Natural born, please. Natural vampires seemed like a good starting point. I felt like you couldn't get much more basic than that when it came to weird magic things. And there was no point learning about infected types until I at least knew a bit about the natural ones. Oof. Probably. Not that I knew enough about any of this to really make an educated decision. I expected Velos to direct me to where I could find that particular topic, but instead he let out a shrill whistle that reverberated through the quiet library. I thought for a moment someone else would bring the book. But no, the book sort of brought itself. After a few seconds, there was a faint whistling. As I turned to the stacks, I saw a book zipping through the air straight toward Velos' outstretched hand. Okay, that is both weird and convenient. He handed it over to me, and I took it gingerly. Despite that it could apparently fly, it really looked like a normal book. Allie led me to a nearby table, and I followed along in a sort of daze.
So I need to go contact the agency, but I don't really want to leave you here alone. You still seem pretty shaken up. I'll send someone to stay with you, okay?
I want to say that I don't need a babysitter, but I kind of feel like I might. Thanks. Wow, Nora not arguing for once. She shot me a grin and waved at me as she hurried through the same door where we'd come in. I took a seat and let out a quiet groan as I opened the book in front of me. I was trying to not think about how weird this all was. I couldn't help it. This was weird. It was really, really weird. If I stopped to actually think about the implications of it all, I was definitely going to freak out again. Instead, I stared down at the text, hoping that doing some reading would distract me. Vampires are one of the oldest known paranormal species. Their existence dates back nearly as far as humans. Vampires appear in some form in the mythology of nearly every ancient culture. Little is known about their beginnings, but some speculate they originated on the other side of what we now refer to as the Divide, a metaphysical barrier that separates the human realm from paranormal realms. The Divide? That sounded kind of ominous. Though not as prolific as humans, vampires are capable of reproducing naturally. Many human legends paint them as cursed undead beings, but they are very much alive. Many of their purported weaknesses are vastly exaggerated or even entirely made up. Unlike the vampires of legend and lore, real vampires are not weak to such things as garlic or religious artifacts such as holy water and crosses. Huh. If I ever meet one, I guess taking them out for Italian was still a go. Hey. Vampires are, however, weak to sunlight. They do not burst into flames or turn to ash, but are incredibly photosensitive. Natural vampires require very specially formulated ointments and creams to protect their sensitive skin from the harsh UV radiation of the sun, and must always wear eye protection when outside. But do they glitter? Vampire sunscreen. Probably SPF 10,000 or something. One area in which legends are accurate is in the vampiric need to consume the blood of living creatures. The exact biological function driving this need is unknown. Vampires are capable of eating other food, but derive very little nourishment from it. Their primary source of sustenance is the lifeblood of, among other creatures, humans. Because they must survive on an entirely liquid diet, natural vampires are born with a shorter digestive tract and 3 stomachs. 3, you say? 3 stomachs? Vampires have 3 stomachs. Yeah, that definitely never came up in movies. Vampires were apparently evil blood-sucking cows. That's immediately what I was thinking too.
Ugh.
I shuddered. Okay. Gross. That was just gross.
Enjoying the book?
I nearly jumped out of my skin at the sound of a voice so close to my ear. I came really close to picking up the book and smacking whoever was behind me, but I realized who it was a split second after they spoke. And I still thought about smacking that person. Mark! You startled me!
I'm terribly sorry.
He didn't look sorry at all.
You were just so absorbed in your reading that you didn't even hear me come up behind you.
You didn't have to deliberately scare me.
I did apologize.
He joined me at the table and looked at the book in front of me, eyebrows raised.
Vampires. What led you to select that as a starting point?
I don't know. I guess because the topic is kind of familiar. I mean, you hear a lot about them in movies and things.
Huh. The butchered truth popular media presents as entertainment is hardly going to give you familiarity with what real vampires are like. We are literally nothing like what you see in the movies. We watch those movies purely for the comedic value.
Whoa, wait. You're a vampire? That came out way louder than I intended. My little screech of surprise practically reverberated off the ceilings.
Shh!
Sorry! I may have forgotten I was in a library there for a moment. But seriously, he was a vampire? No, wait, that actually makes perfect sense. Thank you, girl. His perfectly chiseled features, pale skin, not to mention that snobby attitude. Basically, he was exactly how I imagined vampires to be.
As a matter of fact, I am.
He smiled and leaned way too close for comfort. I did my best not to scramble away from him.
Does that make you nervous?
This whole thing makes me nervous. And if you try to bite me, I'm seriously going to punch you. He sat back in his chair and laughed. It was really more like a dry chuckle, I suppose, but still. I wasn't expecting that. I seriously could not understand this guy at all. He was kind of serious and standoffish most of the time, but that threat seemed to amuse him a bit. It was supposed to scare him, though.
I'm not going to bite you. Even if I wanted to, it's illegal. Vampires who bite sentient creatures without consent are subjected to massive fines or incarceration.
I swallowed nervously, still not quite sure about him. Really? How do you, eat, then?
People donate blood all the time, even directly to our cause. It's screened, processed, and made available for consumption.
Ick. Oh, sounds, tasty.
There's no need to pretend to not be repulsed. Our dietary habits elicit disgust from most other races, paranormal or not.
Alright, you're giving me an option right off the bat, huh? What do I want to start with? I mean, it's disgusting. I'll go middle of the road. Because I think there's a bunch of other cryptics that are also in need of blood. That's not it. I mean, that isn't what I meant at all. It's just... the idea is a bit foreign to me. I can't imagine surviving on a liquid diet. I'd be hungry all the time.
Our bodies did evolve this way. We're perfectly able to compensate for the liquid diet.
Do you really have 3 stomachs?
I'm not human, so of course I don't possess a human physiology.
You didn't have to answer in that tone. I'm not stupid, just curious.
Humans are so quick to look down on others for their odd behaviors when humans are among the worst offenders of much of what they call disgusting.
Hey, I wasn't looking down on you. In fact, I think it's been the other way around since you got here. He scoffed and looked away. Why did Ali send this guy again?
But then, I suppose there's a reasonable chance that you're not human anyway.
Well, we don't know that yet.
If you're fortunate, you'll find out you're not.
I don't think that's true. I know plenty of humans that are decent individuals. The only vampire I know isn't making a great impression, though. In any case, I don't know anything about myself yet. Other than that I'm not a vampire. Not that there would be anything wrong with it if I was. So there.
I see.
Are all vampires this weird? Did I even just think that? Of course vampires were weird. They were vampires. Being a vampire was weird in and of itself.
Your friend has probably returned by now. Perhaps you would be more comfortable in the club room.
Well, I'm fine here.
I would be more comfortable there. The combined smell of magic and moldy books is giving me a headache.
Oh, well, I wouldn't want to inconvenience you, Your Majesty. I wasn't aware libraries offended the delicate vampire nose. I'll be sure to keep it in mind for future reference. Got him. I stood and picked up the book, intending to return it.
Leave it. The enchantment on it will cause it to return on its own after having been abandoned. Unless you wish to borrow it.
Well, I'm sure that talking to the real thing has been more informative than reading a book. We left the book on the table, and he walked me back to the door to the club room. As he set his hand on the handle, he turned back to me, frowning slightly.
Were you really only interested in vampires because of movies?
Well, I've done some vampire research in the past, for personal stories. I guess I was curious how the real thing would add up to what I learned about in folklore. Mark gave me a look that seemed almost pleased.
Folklore is still significantly off, but it's better than anything modern. If you ever have questions, you can always ask me. I wouldn't find it too much trouble to answer your questions.
Thanks. I may take you up on it. To be honest, this whole thing is still really weird. It's like trying to find my footing on something where it's difficult to find your footing. Nailed it. Mark was silent for a moment before he reached into the inner pocket of his blazer and pulled out a phone. I was wondering, I'm like, are you the only guy we're not going to get the number of during this library date thing?
In that case, what's your number? I'll send you a text so you can add me to your contacts. And since you also agreed to help me with my Shakespeare, then my helping you navigate your footing in paranormal society can be considered compensation.
Oh. Okay.
Unless you don't want to.
No! I mean, I'm fine with it. Probably. To be honest, I was a little nervous about giving my contact details to a vampire, but at that point, there was no reason not to. It wasn't like I was inviting him into my house or something. I wonder if the invitation thing is even true. I gave him my number and he put his phone away. I assumed he would text me later. Please have a bat icon. Or an owl. I guess because you turn into an owl, don't you? He opened the club room door and waited for me to go first. Such a gentleman. Allie was walking in the main door at the same time we were coming in from the library.
Oh, good! You're back too. I was about to go get you. Did you learn anything?
A little, I guess. I think I just need time to process all this.
Understandable. Thanks for staying with her, Mark.
He shrugged.
It wasn't a problem. I'll be going to class now, though.
Thanks, Mark. He just nodded and quietly left the club room without looking back. Yeah, he was definitely weird. Okay. I don't think I can ever skip this section, but it's fine. Allie sprawled out on the sofa as if she was exhausted.
So we found your bridge, creep.
Ugh. What was it?
A Spriggan. I don't think it meant any harm, but it's been gently relocated to a less populated area.
You know, it said you're back to me. How did it know I was back? I mean, it was acting like it knew me. Allie shook her head and shrugged.
Wild Fae say a lot of strange things. I wouldn't put too much stock in anything it said, but...
But?
Wild Fae don't show themselves to just anyone. Even I can't see them if they want to hide. The fact that you could see it...
Good grief, Allie, it cannot possibly get any weirder than it already has, so just say it.
I think you should start researching more deeply into the Fae. The fact you could see the Spriggans so easily could mean that's where your heritage lies. The agency guys agreed.
Well, at this point, that's no weirder than finding out I'm a vampire and I've secretly been sneaking out for years to eat my neighbors.
Or finding out you're a witch.
Or anything else magical, mystical, and or weird.
No doubt.
So now what?
Well, you can hide in the club and read all day, but I also got permission to take you home early.
On what grounds?
On the grounds that you have a very, very bad migraine.
That isn't actually a lie. My head really does feel ready to explode.
It gets easier. I promise it does.
I hope so.
Want me to take you home?
Actually, yeah, that would be great.
By the way...
She stood and went to pick up something by the door. My bag!
We found it hanging at the bottom of the bridge.
I took it from her and checked inside. Everything seemed to be there. Maybe Brenna left it there after I, ran off screaming.
Well, at least we were able to recover it.
Allie led the way out to the hall while I fumbled around trying to text my idiot brother. Going home, bad headache, have permission. I doubted he'd respond. He never did. During the walk to the car, I did my best to look ill in case anyone stopped us. It wasn't completely an act. Now that the adrenaline was gone and I didn't have a weird conversation to distract me, I actually was feeling a bit woozy. Allie didn't really know much about the Fae in general, so on the way home we mostly talked about the other club members. While she didn't go into all the details, just the basics. Elliot and Mark were both vampires. Elliot was infected a few years ago, but Mark was born that way. Danny was a werewolf, also infected a few years ago. Ewan was Fae, a Dullahan, basically a headless rider, hence the head coming off. William was an Esper, which was essentially a human with psychic powers. Brenna was also some type of Fae. Velos, Allie, and Corvin were all in the wizard category. There were several other members too, some from pretty much every category. A lot of them never showed up or participated. And, like she'd said before, there were other staff members who were cryptics as well, including the school principal. It was just so... weird. After Allie dropped me at home, I went straight to my room and crashed. I really, really hoped strange encounters like that morning weren't going to become the norm. But I was definitely going to be avoiding the bridge for a while. I didn't think I could stand another major incident. Not anytime soon, anyway. And given what Allie had hinted at regarding the upcoming holiday, it seemed like it would be best to lay low for a while.